36 feet away from things. Anybody in this room. But welcome to the first public forum of the Bolton Master Planning process. It's been an interesting time for the last 18 months to try to put together a forum in which we did it, and I think it's very necessary to be physically face-to-face and be able to engage both ways. But welcome. I'm glad everybody's masked. I will be so momentarily. But let me introduce the Master Planning Committee. I believe virtually everybody is here. We've identified individually. It's a group of 11 people who were put together in November of 2019. I might add that in addition to the original 11 people, we had 2 interns who are now attending college from Neshoba Regional High School, who were incredibly useful, active, engaged, and particularly in communicating with their cohort. So I'd like to thank both Abby and Megan for the work that they've done. I presume that they are hard work doing homework at home. The overall program for the day will be a presentation which will last perhaps a half hour, perhaps slightly more in terms of time, since we started a little bit late. We'll take a look at the goals, the overall goals, what a master plan really is, the 2006 master plan, where we are now with respect to assessing the existing conditions, which if we're planning on future, we better know where we are now, and finally introducing the vision statement. And then perhaps the most important part of the whole meeting are the individual stations around the room here. Those have been selected on the basis of not only key elements of the master plan, but based on feedback that we've gotten from not only our survey, but previous surveys of what people are particularly interested in and what people see as ways that we can improve Bolton and perhaps eliminate some of the issues and threats that are now present to Bolton. Once we finish this, and the way that we'll do this is we can rotate through the various stations. We'll have facilitators at each station to discuss your perspectives with you. We would like feedback either in the form of actually written open-ended comments, which you'll see on a number, as well as tick marks and markers. Then we'll come back together at the end of about an hour, and we will debrief very, very briefly on what the major key comments were in each of the individual stations. So that's the plan for the overall 2 hours, a bit more. And now I'd like to introduce our new town planner, Valerie Ortiz, who joined us March, but it seems like a lot longer than that. Valerie has been absolutely instrumental in putting this whole thing together and making sure that it was appropriately aligned, making sure that from a logistical point of view, the right people were put in the right places and provided the right volunteer services, which is great. So with that, Valerie.
Hello, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming out today. I really appreciate it. It's wonderful to finally get to see so many people in person. I just want to note as well that I am unmasked, but I am also extremely vaccinated. In particular, I wanted to express my thanks to Bob Sikansky from our select board for being present today. So thank you very much for that. So our goals for the first public forum will provide an orientation to the master plan process. We'll do an overview of preliminary existing conditions analysis that our task groups have been working on. We'll look to review our vision statement. We'll hear your initial feedback, and then we'll discuss what the process is moving forward from today. So what is a master plan? Is anyone here, just by show of hands, familiar with the master plan process or has ever looked at one? Ooh, very few. Nice, okay. So the statutory definition from the Mass General Laws is that a master plan or a comprehensive plan It's a document that is designed to provide a basis for decision-making regarding the long-term physical development of a municipality. So these are plans that look at the next 10, 15, 20 years down the road. These are very much resident-led, community-driven plans. The towns can use the goals from the priority recommendations from the master plan in order to gain funding to complete projects through grants or through requests at town meeting. Just note first that for me as a planner, I view the master plan as my work plan for the next coming years. So the first thing I did when I got to Bolton in March was to flip through the existing master plan, go directly to the back where they have that implementation matrix, and just look and see what the top goals are from the town. What am I going to be doing while I'm here? So this is not a plan that sits on a shelf. This is a plan that is on our desks and that we are held accountable for. This slide is showing the components of our steering committee. These are also the components of our master plan. So each of these topics represents a group of dedicated volunteers from Bolton that are working on these subject areas. And I'll note that these areas, these subjects we recognize that they overlap quite a bit. So we're talking to each other outside of these specific groups, right? Thank you. So this is our vision statement. So at one level, a community is where we pursue our basic human needs for shelter, sustenance, safety, and security. But at another level, a community can also serve our human needs for connection, purpose, creativity, expression, relationship, collaboration, and the pursuit of happiness. We envision a Bolton that aims to promote human flourishing along all these dimensions. To make Bolton a true home to all residents, a place of welcome to all visitors, and a source of well-being into the future, we shall use our collective resources to preserve and promote our core values of community, opportunity, mobility, and sustainability. You will get a chance to comment on this vision statement, which is a draft at this point. During the interactive portion of today, it'll be on this far wall over here. All right, so taking a look back, this is our existing master plan from 2006. Just another raise of hands here, show of hands. Has anyone seen this document?
We worked on it.
Nice. Wonderful. Okay, so you do have some familiarity with master planning. So I'll give you just a brief snapshot of progress. So as I mentioned before, this is from the back of the plan. This is the priority action steps, the implementation matrix. On the right, we've added a column that shows our level of progress based on that goal. So if you go to the next slide, you can see that we've made some progress on those goals. So we have maintained a small town feel. We have a stronger school system. We've made key improvements to municipal facilities and services, such as the library, the construction of a public safety building, the creation of a town common, and improved fire and EMS services. While spending has been stable, our taxes have not moderated. And we've also had minimal gains in terms of housing diversity and affordability. But I think in sum, it's fair to say that we've made good progress in a whole on the master plan. So again, that was not a plan that sat on a shelf. This is our current steering committee, our current steering committee's process. So as Bob mentioned earlier, the committee was launched in 2019. Since then, they have worked to engage the community with a survey, and we've also gained consensus as a committee on what our process is. We've also worked on our existing conditions analysis. So the red box is showing where we are today. So it's important to note that this is just the first of a handful of public forums. In the future, we'll be diving a little bit deeper into some specific topic areas. So this, again, is just the orientation, the opening of the process. In the future, we're also going to be seeking input on those priority recommendations. We'll continue to develop the vision statements, and it's also important to note that the master plan will need to be approved by the town. All right, so let's take a look at some of our task group's progress so far. I will note that the slides that I'm showing today and the links that are associated will all be available online, so you'll be able to look more in depth when you're at home. So we're going to start off with climate change, mitigation, and adaptation. So I'll note that when we talk about mitigation, we're looking at methods of minimizing the impacts of climate change. When I talk about adaptation, we're looking at how to prepare and protect our community and our ecosystems from the impacts of climate change. And resiliency is really how is our community, how are our ecosystems going to bounce back from those impacts of climate change. And so in Bolton, we know what our hazards are. We're able to say that we know it's going to be flooding, drought, we're going to have severe storms, invasive pests. And then it's interesting too to look at our land cover in Bolton. So nearly 60% of our land is forested currently, and only 14% is developed. This slide is showing our wetland resource areas. So in green are the actual wetlands, in blue are our water bodies, and if you can see it from there, I'm not sure if you can, but there are red dots noting where our certified and potential vernal pools are. So these are all sensitive resource areas that need to be protected. This map and the map before it, I'll note, are both available in the Apple Country Natural Solutions final report. This is part of the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program that the town engaged in with our communities of Harvard and Devens as well. So this map is showing well, first of all, showing that we can do a parcel by parcel look at areas that need protection, that are critical. So these are, again, the high priority areas of land protection. Moving on to housing. The majority of homes in Bolton are single family homes. And given state housing demand and sales prices, we are not able to satisfy the needs of moderate and low income residents. So it's important to think about the first time home buyer. Are they able to locate in Bolton? Are older adults able to downsize and remain in their community? The bright side here is that we do have a recently approved housing production plan, which sets out our goals and our needs and gives us a basis for moving forward with some of those goals. So to illustrate kind of the lack of diversity in our housing stock, we can look at the housing type, affordability, and whether or not there is a deed restriction for age. So when we talk about age restriction, this is for adults age 55 and over. So again, mostly single family homes, mostly market rate rather than deed restricted affordable, and mostly no age restriction. You can also think about affordability in terms of the size of a home. So about 60% of houses in Bolton are over 4 bedrooms, so very large houses, which also, of course, impacts affordability. And you can also look at the age of the householder. So as we plan for 10, 15 years into the future, how are those bars on the right moving over? So as people age, are we again able to allow them to remain in their homes or relocate to an age-targeted home? On the other side of that, the householder that is under the age of 35, are we able to draw young families into Bolton in order to have an age-balanced community? This is my favorite map. This is the zoning map. So zoning has implications across all of the task group subjects, of course. So what you're seeing here is that the majority of land in Bolton is zoned residential. So the residential areas are those that are not highlighted. If you look at the pink and the red areas, those are our business and limited business districts. On the east side of town in brown is our industrial district, and on the southwestern quadrant is our limited business and recreation district. This is where the International Golf Course is located. So for me as a planner, when I take a look at this map, what I think is important to note is the amount of sprawl that we're seeing in our commercial district all along the Route 117 corridor. It leads itself to, is essentially showing that the built environment, or that, at least the zoning here, is leading itself to a car-centric community. We can also look at what spaces in town are designated open space. So in green, we're looking at open space. In orange is open space that is restricted in terms of conservation or agricultural preservation restrictions. And then in light brown here, we're looking at the trail map. For economic development, I'll note that our existing conditions analysis is ongoing. We will be looking at a parcel-by-parcel analysis of the business district and taking a particular eye toward our vacancy rate. We know that pre-pandemic, we were looking at about 20 to 22% of the business district was vacant. But for today, I'll just talk a little bit more about employment. So this graph here is showing the top employment opportunities within Bolton. So mostly teaching jobs and agricultural workers. These three charts are just different ways kind of looking at commuting to work. So who is coming into Bolton and where are they coming from for work? Who is remaining in Bolton, who also lives here, and then what Bolton residents, where are Bolton residents going to work? So the top towns that people are coming from to work in Bolton are Leominster, Clinton, Fitchburg, Worcester, and Marlborough. And the top communities that residents in Bolton are going to for work are Boston, Worcester, Marlborough, Waltham, and Framingham. The middle chart is a little bit confusing, but essentially saying pre-pandemic, if there are 1,300 people coming into town to work, there are about 160 or so that are living and working in Bolton, and then 2,500 that leave town to go to work. Our transportation task group is focused on traffic and safety, connectivity, and regional access. When we think about traffic safety, this map is showing the locations of the highest rates of vehicular accidents. So all along Route 117, don't think that's anyone's surprise. But they're thinking particularly about what is the effect of all this traffic on our side roads? What speed or traffic calming measures should we adapt? In terms of connectivity, we're looking at the gaps. This map is looking at the gaps in our sidewalk network, and it's also looking at the trail network. So how do we increase multimodal transit opportunities in order to get people out of their cars, allow them to bike to a shop, walk to their friend's house, go for a run safely? And then the last graph here, or map here, is showing regional access. So we're looking at where Bolton's located in proximity to economic centers such as Worcester and Boston Lowell, as well as the commuter train stations. So again, we're seeing Bolton as, because we're not able to participate really in that, the current public transit network, we're again an auto-dominated community. And this is a concern for our senior population. If you're not able to drive anymore, how are you getting to a medical appointment? How are you getting to a social obligation? How are you able to go shopping? So the steering committee is also particularly interested in our regional context. What opportunities Bolton can provide to the region. For example, how do we understand the state housing pressures? How those might impact the town in the coming years? How can Bolton gain connectivity in the regional transportation network? So this map is showing the towns in the area that are served by the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. This is our regional planning agency. And the steering committee is partnering with planners at MAPC for technical assistance on our master plan. So this is an apt time to consider regional contexts, as the MAPC is also looking to publish very shortly their regional plan called Metro Common 2050. So this is essentially a master plan they've done for this whole region. And we're very appreciative today to have Ralph Milner from MAPC here. This is over there in the back. Ralph is a principal planner in the land use division at MAPC, and he'll be here in the corner to review the goals that are outlined in MetroCom in 2050, and also answer any questions that you might have about how our master planning process relates to regional planning. All right. So we have the next hour. Everything that you'll need to participate or engage with these interactive stations is available at each station. You'll have the hour to spend as much time or as little time as you'd like at each station, depending on what your interest is. And I'll just go through what those are. So over here on the left, we have our wish poem. Then we have a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. We have economic development, housing, open space and recreation, transportation and mobility, regional planning, and our community aspirations, and also our vision statement. All right, thank you so much. Go forward.
Thank you.
So as people are getting back to their seats, I'm just going to explain the way this debrief is going to work. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to have one representative from each of the stations just come up and give a quick summary of what stood out to them, things that surprised them, just give us a highlight. And then what I'd really like to do is, to the extent we're all still have the time, just kind of get into a little back and forth. So don't be shy, raise your hand if you have some questions that we want to ask folks. And then the most important thing, and I don't know when Penny Kirkin wants to do this, but we are going to hand out our door prizes. Okay, so we're going to leave that up to Mr. Romer. All right, so thank you again for all being here. I think what I'd like to do is, could we start with the Wish Home facilitator, Penny Kirkin, just to give us a little bit of what she learned there.
My Wish Home sort of was grouped in a bunch of ways. There were some good ones. Walkability, climate awareness, a mobile community center, 3 pickleball courts, shopping options, and the impact on taxes. And the best one was the young lady who said to me, I'm going to write something and my husband will kill me. I said, I believe that I'm on a need-to-know basis, so right away. So those are about the basics.
So in housing, we had concerns and the things that people seem to be concerned about in many cases really didn't have to do so much with the housing as to maybe the impact of the housing. So there was a concern about density, about traffic congestion, and that sort of thing. A little bit of concern about the downsizing issue. And several people talked about that. So the need and the fact that the town really doesn't have a lot of housing related to people who would want to get out of larger homes into small homes there. Community Preservation Act sort of won the prize for most green dots for strategies, and I guess in a way that's good because there are things in addition to housing that community preservation can be used for as well. The traffic, as I mentioned, is something that is listed as a concern both for housing and just kind of in general. And there's an interest in, I guess you could say, in making the mixed-use zoning work. So there are a number of green dots up there. We have mixed-use zoning now, but it really hasn't been used that much yet. So I think there's some interest in that.
So I'm Ralph Wilmer. I'm a principal planner with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. The Metropolitan Area Planning Council is the regional planning agency that covers 101 cities and towns in the greater Boston area. And we are finishing up a regional plan The goals were posted on that board that's stationed in the corner, and I have handouts, whoever wants one can take one, that gets into those goals and policies in more detail. I talked to a bunch of people throughout the afternoon, and first of all, it's just great being able to do it this way as opposed to on a computer screen. This is the first time I've done one like this in about 19 or 20 months. And this is a great crowd for a Sunday afternoon in a relatively small town. So our agency covers a wide range of communities. We have obviously Boston being a big city, but we have other mid-sized cities like Lynn and Chelsea and Revere and Salem in our region. And then we also have a lot of rural communities as well, and Bolton falls into that category. So we have to sort of address a lot of these issues with that in mind, keeping in mind that we do have a wide variety of communities with a wide variety of challenges, but there are also a lot of underlying themes that are very common to every community. Transportation access is always important. Housing affordability is always important. Open space preservation and the ability to provide recreational opportunities for people of all abilities is very important, regardless of whether we're in a dense urban population or a rural population. So the goals that we tried to focus on in the regional planning effort, and this was a 3-year effort that we went out to cities and towns throughout the region. We had meetings in Boston, we did online surveys, we did a whole bunch of different methods for getting public input into it. But we tried to develop some goals and strategies that sort of straddle that range between rural and urban communities. And I think that a lot of those issues will resonate here. I think that they are going to be, it'll serve as a good guide for your planning effort as you move forward. I work in the land use department at MAPC, so I do master plans all the time. I do zoning work, I do housing plans, open space plans. So, I see a lot of these issues in all sorts of different communities. And, when we start a master plan, we always do something just like this, with the stations around the room and everything. So, it's a great way to get input into the process. And moving forward, we're going to continue to try and work with the town to see how we can help to support this planning effort. Valerie is a one-person department this is probably just one of a large number of things that she has on her plate in terms of responsibilities. So our agency is here to provide technical assistance to our 101 cities and towns. And Bolton is one of them, and we're going to continue to work with the community to try and figure out how we can best help as your planning effort moves forward.
Okay, as far as economic development, there weren't great surprises. I think the typical issue was the lack of amenities in Bolton, and clearly restaurants are right at the top of that list. Also got a great list of good restaurants around Bolton. One interesting thing that came off, and it's certainly something we're going to be faced with a great deal, are the after effects of COVID on a wide range of things, economic development being a significant part. What are the implications of online commerce? What can be done in the way of providing economic development in a town that either uses online commerce or uses commerce that is not typically used online? And that goes into a number of other areas. Who's going to be working on it? How are they going to be housed? What are the implications to transportation? And that's something about which we will certainly have a great deal of discussion with Ralph Wilmer. It's an enormous issue. It could go a number of different ways, but whatever way it goes will be terribly important to us. Economic development, transportation, traffic, housing, etc. So that was what basically came out of it. It's different from our original survey in that preceded COVID and a great deal has changed.
Yeah, I don't think this is too surprising. On our safety map, we got stickers basically complaining about all the places you already know that are dangerous. Most of the intersections on 117, complaints about getting onto 117 and the traffic stuff. And then there were lots of trail and bike stickers on South Bolton Road. So, hey, a lot of people live on South Bolton Road. On the preferences for accessible access, I mean, our example were sidewalks and bike trails. There's a lot of interest in more sidewalks, more connectivity of the trails and the sidewalks and public places, including parking at trailheads, as well as shared use trails, which would be more than just a footpath, for strollers or other stuff. A lot of the comments on the comment board were also about sidewalks, about maintenance, better connectedness, and then there were also some comments about shared rides and access to parking lots for shared rides, or using the senior facilities more, increasing them, and let's see what else. I think that's about it. There weren't any surprises. There's just a lot of support for more mobility and more variety of mobility.
So, for community aspirations, number 2 and 8 seem to be tied for most popular, and that was preserving natural resources and a sustainable community, and maintaining rural character and honoring our heritage. Number 1, surprisingly, was the most confusing for people, and we got a lot of yellow dots for that, and that had to deal with aspiring to preserve and foster community traditions and to promote connectedness and rootedness for future generations. People found it too vague. They didn't know exactly what was meant by traditions. Comments such as there have been many traditions that seem to have fallen to the wayside because of lack of interest. Other than that, for services, there were a couple of comments about there needed to be more support for seniors, and that's about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew Shelvin here at the Open Space Station, but nothing too surprising. A lot of the comments were preserving our farms, forests, and wetland areas. I think a lot of people had a specific area that was important to them, and I think we highlighted a lot of them on the map there. And some improvements might be recreation facilities, like pools or pickleball courts was mentioned, like the other station there, and community center, where maybe more recreational activities could happen for people of all ages. Maybe some trails like Bower Springs is a little too crowded. I don't know how much COVID-19 had to do with that, but general favorable feedback on our trails and maybe better maintenance of some of our trails too. That's about it. Thanks.
It's kind of a tough one because it's like 4 and 1, they all kind of overlap. But for strengths, obviously our physical spaces, our open spaces, the beauty of Bolton, the trails, the farms, our local and agricultural businesses, our strengths, our community, family connections, and our ability to help each other I would say definitely our strengths in this community. Our weaknesses, traffic, a lot of what has already been said. Traffic, lack of diversity, lack of business opportunities, mobility issues, high taxes. Interestingly, local communication was a weakness. So the idea that there's no real local press and that social media kind of, especially with the pandemic, has kind of taken over in an odd kind of communicative way. There's room there for some opportunities, I think. The threats, I'm jumping down to threats because they parallel a lot of the weaknesses, the traffic, climate concerns, lack of awareness or understanding of water and land protection, the wrong kind of development coming in, uncontrolled development, and folks having a concern about an inability to downsize. Those are some of the big ones. So opportunities, which is what I wanted to end on because it's a positive. Certainly transportation opportunities for improvement there, increased housing variety, community spaces for all ages, obviously a senior center, community engagement opportunities, and just getting more of a variety of people involved in what we do and the wonderful things that are happening both.
Okay. Well, since it's just about 4 o'clock and we can get wrapped up, thanks again, all of you, for being here. And I did want to just, before everyone leaves, can we give a round of applause to Valerie for all of her efforts? Have a great afternoon, everybody. Thanks again for your time.